So is there a question?
So how would I know there is only one consciousness?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you ever known any other consciousness?
No.
Okay, so it's possible, given that you haven't known any other consciousness. I mean, there may be another consciousness, but based on your experience,
Right.
there is no supporting evidence
Correct.
that there is another consciousness.
Right.
So it's a good place to start. That I could imagine another consciousness, but even when I imagine another consciousness, it is this consciousness that is imagining another consciousness. Ever,
Right.
I never really experienced any other consciousness in a way, you know.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Also, if there was another consciousness, something would know that there, let's say there are two consciousnesses. Something would know that there are two consciousnesses. There is consciousness A and B, because what would two consciousness be without them, without any knowingness of that? So there would be something that would know consciousness A and consciousness B. That something that would know consciousness A and consciousness B, that's that one consciousness. So we are back to one consciousness. Let's say, call it a mega consciousness, or a capital C consciousness that knows, consciousness A, B, C, D, etc. And since consciousness, the capital C consciousness, would know consciousness A, B, C, and D, the fact of knowing, for something to know something else, there has to be a connection. Because if there is no connection, then there is no knowingness. Some sort of connection. I've never seen any Eskimos. But I have a connection with the Eskimos because I've seen pictures of Eskimos in books. I've seen movies where I've seen Eskimos, and people have told me that so there is some connection, not a connection where I've seen an Eskimo and I've had a meal with an Eskimo, but there is some connection with the Eskimos, so I know there are Eskimos. People who live, in near the North Pole. So that capital C consciousness that would know consciousness A, B, C, and D would have some sort of connection with them. And if there is a connection, that means they're not two. They're not separate. A good metaphor is the electric grid in a city. There is an electric current. That's electric grid. That one electric grid, that same electric grid, illumines, provides light or current to 100,000 or 100 million different lights. Some are fluorescent, some are neon, some are incandescent. It gives electric to the stove, etc., etc., etc. But it's that one current that appears, that manifests as those infinite minds. So at the local level, there is incandescent. And then on another point, fluorescent. You go into the kitchen, it's maybe neon, etc. So at the mind level, there are different impressions. But it's that one grid that illumines the entire network. I'm just giving you a metaphor to sort of come to your question about this one consciousness. Now, the question, how can I know there is one consciousness, cannot be answered via thought, via the mind. It cannot be answered via experience. Why? Because a thought is known. The mind is known. You perceive a thought. You perceive a perception. The thought does not know. The thought does not perceive, is not knowing. Thought A does not know thought B. A thought does not know a perception. A thought does not know that which perceives it. An oak tree does not know you. You know the oak tree. So, via the mind, you cannot know the consciousness, because the mind is known. It falls in the phenomenal realm. It is not in the knowing realm. It is in the realm of the known, not in the realm of the knowing. But there is a different, not the mind, a different avenue to the knowing. But it's not via the mind. The avenue to knowing, to consciousness, is you, is I as consciousness. But not via the mind. It's a direct knowingness. You know that you are conscious. You don't need to ask the mind. Let me think about it. Can I answer you? I'll send you an email tonight at 9 p.m. to tell you if I am conscious or not. No. You can ask yourself directly, am I conscious? And yeah, I'm conscious. You don't ask anybody. You ask yourself. But you are yourself. You don't need to go to the kitchen to ask yourself. You ask yourself directly. Because you are yourself, you're never not yourself. So there is a direct knowingness, and that's not via the mind, where consciousness knows it is, and consciousness knows it is real. So the question to your answer cannot come to you from beyond you. Because everything that is beyond you is something that you know. I'm using the term beyond you with quotation mark because there's nothing beyond you, but just using that way of speaking. See, that the answer to your question is within you already. You know the answer to your question. How do I know there is one consciousness? I am that. I am this one consciousness. Now, how come I forget that I am this one consciousness? That I am the reality and I am the one and only reality. How come I forget that? I forget that whenever I identify with Chris. Now, suddenly, because of this identification, I, as consciousness, which is universal, has no borders, we'll come back to that in a minute, has become a Chris. And as soon as this consciousness, via your identification, because I am not forcing you to identify with Chris, you are. You are doing it out of your own freedom. So I'm Chris. As soon as you identify with this consciousness, I'm Chris, what comes with it is that there is another consciousness out there, it's Magdi. They come together. As soon as you separate one, then there is the many. You see? As soon as you leave the castle, you are in the village with all the villagers and all the farmers and all the, the merchants and so on. Now you can ask yourself, why do I leave my own knowingness? I know that I am this reality. I know that I am awareness. Why do I leave this knowingness? And I forget and say, oh, I am Chris. Oh, what's happening to me? Where am I at? I've been meditating for 10 years. I've had, awakening experience 5 years ago. It's coming and go. Would I ever, so what's making you do that? You know you are consciousness. You know you are presence. What's making you go, oh, when will I really know that? When will I be established as that? I need to be established as that. You have to ask yourself this question, because you cannot ask me. I'm just saying hello to you. It's nice to see you. You have to ask yourself this question. Because when you ask yourself this question, you are coming to the real cause. You're coming to the real source of this forgetfulness. You see? Because it is your choice. Nobody's forcing you. Your parents are not forcing you. Your boss is not forcing you. Your friends are not forcing you. The bus driver is not forcing you. I am not. So you have to ask yourself this question. Now, contemplate that you are the reality that perceives this perception right now. Whatever is perceived changes, but the reality that perceives does not change. The image on the screen changes, but the reality that perceives, that perceives, is not a thing that changes.
But you cannot perceive during the deep sleep.
Right. During the deep sleep, there is no object, there are no objects of perception.
So you just being
That,
as I am.
absolutely. There are no body, mind, no world. It's just pure I amness. The mind is not there. And deep sleep is the absence of world, body, mind. And the awakened state, not I'm talking waking from sleep, but the realized state, is the absence of a reality external to consciousness. The reality of the world, body, mind returns to the one and only reality, the reality of consciousness. Whenever the mind attributes an external reality to a world, body, mind, then there are multiple realities and there is the sense of separation, and the mind is confused, the body is at ease. The entire space, the entire phenomenal realm is affected, is divided, is affected by that virus. The external reality of the world body-mind is a mind impression. It's a belief system. Because right now you're perceiving this perception. But is this perception external to you?
Cannot be perceived as external.
That one?
It cannot be external, logical way.
I'm not talking about logical, I'm talking in your direct experience. In your direct experience. Right now you're experiencing this perception. Is this perception outside of you? So when you contemplate this question, you will find that the perception is not outside of you. It is a mind perception that's happening within you. If you perceive an oak tree, the perception, is it outside of you or inside of you? It is within you. Once you contemplate, you have to contemplate that, in fact, you never experience anything outside of you. Even though the mind says, oh no, this tree is 1,000 miles outside of you, your experience says, it is within me, this perception is within me, this experience is within me, the sensation is within me, the thought is within me. What would you trust? Your experience or thought that's constantly changing? Because your experience is always there. It's always saying, I am perceiving this perception. Doesn't matter what it is. And this perception is within me. I am perceiving in my night dream, I'm perceiving dreams. And these dreams are within me. In the waking state, I'm perceiving 495. And this perception is within me. I am sitting and I'm perceiving the image of my mother, how sweet she is. That perception, that image is within me. What would you trust? Your experience or the mind that says, oh no, your mother is out there, you're in here? This is contemplation. Okay.